Hello, we're Natalie and Abby, and you are listening to The Sensational Life with Bibic.
Join us to explore the many layers of life through unique and inspiring topics each week. Whether you're looking to better support yourself or others, we're here to provide insights, practical tips, and meaningful conversations.
Bibic is a national charity dedicated to empowering children and young adults with brain injuries, disabilities, and neurological or developmental challenges. We're both part of a fantastic team of developmental therapists. While our title might sound a bit fancy, it really just means that we're here to support children, young adults, and families with helpful strategies for any challenges that they encounter.
There may be times we cover some difficult topics during this podcast, but we will always give you prior warning of this. We'll have some wonderful guest speakers joining us, and we can't wait to hear from you with all your questions and your own stories. Together, we can create a more inclusive and understanding world, one episode at a time. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sensational Life with Bibic podcast. We can't believe we're already on episode 3. Just to touch on, last episode we talked about emotional control and how what is emotional control, how can it affect us, and we sort of talked through things like the arc of a meltdown and the hand model of the brain. So if you want to go back and take a listen to that episode, please do. This episode is all on planning and prioritising, so we're going a little bit deeper into executive functioning and sort of what typically people think of when they think of executive functioning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this planning and prioritising element of executive functioning, like we need to plan everything that we do. So whether it's, planning a holiday, which is quite, a big one, or even down to like brushing your teeth, you still need to be able to plan those steps. And quite often we have families that come in and go, they just won't brush their teeth. And it's not because they don't want to brush their teeth, although, younger children might not want to, but a lot of the time it can come down to this executive functioning, and you go, can you go brush your teeth? And they go, yeah. And then they don't do it because they don't know the steps in the moment, because you've got to remember that this executive functioning is that in the moment thinking. So in the moment, they cannot go, okay, I need to go to the bathroom and get my toothbrush and then get the toothpaste and things like that. It's just gone completely offline. Outside of that moment, you go, well, go on then, tell me how you brush your teeth. Like, oh, I need to do this, this, and this. But yeah, that is the in the moment thinking that just they can't do. So without that planning, you can't do anything really. So it's really important that we try and support this area as best we can.
Yeah, and we thought it was quite a nice episode to sort of lead on from the emotional side of things, because if you think, actually, especially when in our first episode when we discussed fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and then obviously emotional control, if you think planning, prioritising comes into a large amount of what we do, and as we said, we touched on sort of the hand model of the brain. If we're in that state of emotional dysregulation and our executive function isn't working, we cannot plan and prioritise. We're not going to be able to do those simple things. And I think I often touch on it a lot when I'm speaking about teenagers going into secondary school. I think we briefly said about sort of executive functioning and sort of the potential sort of delays. When we say delays, we're not talking sort of developmental delays or anything like that.
No.
We're talking more in terms of its effectiveness, how well it's working for that individual. Now, this can be anywhere within the region of sort of 3 to 5 years behind. So, especially when it comes to that plan and prioritising aspect, if you think a student in secondary education now needs to follow a lesson plan, pick what books they've got to carry with them, get from A to B in terms of getting from one lesson to the next. If their executive functioning is working at a 3 to 5 year delay, actually how they are going to be able to do that and work through that maybe, if we go for a 13-year-old, could be working at a 10 to 8-year-old, whereas in primary school where that individual would be sat, they wouldn't have to do
No, you wouldn't expect them to be doing the same things that a 13-year-old would be doing. You would build up to that process, wouldn't you?
Yes.
And so there are lots of things that we can do to support this, and we'll be going over some of the strategies that we suggest at Bibic. But I think it's really important to just remember and highlight that quite often the refusal side of things comes from this element.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, with teenagers especially, "Oh, shall we go for a walk?" No. And if their executive functioning is not functioning and doing what it should be doing at that moment, and you've got that kind of emotional dysregulation, at that point you could be asking them to go anywhere.
I think we always use a really good analogy, don't we, of asking people to go for a walk.
Mm.
So if I asked you, Abby,
Yeah.
if you wanted to go for a walk, we would know that actually we want to get a 30-minute podcast recorded. We are at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in our lovely therapy centre. We know the routes that we've got around us. We know what the weather's looking like. We're joyful. We've got the sun
Yeah.
outside of us. It's a little bit cold, so we put a coat on. So we go through all the steps that we need to plan. However, for an individual that is struggling with that planning and organising side of things, you start sort of hitting barriers. So they would potentially go, well, where are we going? What are we doing? What we need to wear? Why are we doing this? How long is it going to take?
Who am I going to see?
Yeah, what's it going to look like? And this sometimes can cause them to sort of spiral a little bit in terms of sort of anxiety and worry of what actually is this whole event going to look like. And something as simple as going for a walk can then mean sort of so much more to them that it's easier just to say no, refuse, and I'm not going, I'm not doing it. Despite the fact that we know that they love walking, they really like being outside. We know it's going to help them do regulation in terms of their vestibular sense, and it's going to be really effective for them. But actually in that moment thinking, it's a no. So especially when it comes to sort of planning and prioritising, we often speak about quantifying activities and giving them the structure. And a lot of the times this is where you find giving structure, giving outlines, running through lots of things, you get a little bit more willingness to participate.
So although it feels like you're almost being stricter with those boundaries, and you're actually providing them with the structure and support that they need to be able to transition from activity to activity, or, going out for walks, or, or we're just going to pop and see Nanny and it's an unexpected kind of trip. You quite often, if you can quantify those activities or just set it out for them, you get that more willingness to engage because you've supported that executive functioning side.
So when we say quantify activities, now this is putting activities into I always describe it as putting it into more of a physical form, a more practical form. So for example, if we'll use the walk as still our sort of reference, going for that walk, talking about it in terms of length rather than using time. So it'll be short one, long one, medium one, or it'll be roughly 5 minutes, which we find a lot of the time that time holds no value because we always are very flippant with time, aren't we?
So it's quite an abstract concept as well.
Yeah.
And particularly if you've got any like neurodivergence, particularly like with like ADHD, time is really distorted. You say 5 minutes, like that's ages or that's no time at all. There's no kind of concept of what that actually looks like.
Especially if you're in a moment of hyper focus or you're sort of really in something. I know many of us will look at the clock and they'll see a time and then, I don't know, it feels like 5 minutes gone past and look and it's an hour gone past. So time can be very flippant. Therefore, you can use more structure. So for example, we're going around the small field, the big field, we're going to do a loop to the post box and back. So more of a practical, physical representation of time. The other things that you can use, we sort of use reference in terms of supermarket. So we're only quickly going to the supermarket, which sometimes can see sort of big outbursts because it's a long period of time, they don't want to do it. We're doing a big trolley shop, a small trolley shop, a basket shop, or
listing the things that you need.
Yeah. So it's really outlining exactly what that value of time is and giving that reference to it.
Yeah. Another thing that you can do with quantifying them is if you would like your child or young person to stop what they're doing and say, can you stop being on your phone or stop watching the TV and then come and have tea, say, rather than give them timing, because we've already said that can be quite abstract, you quantify how many repetitions of something they've got left. So if they're playing a game, be like, okay, one more of the game, or like one more set, and then it's time to come for tea. Or if they're watching a TV program, like, okay, so finish that episode and then it's time to come and do whatever you want them to do. Because by doing it that way, you get kind of like a finality about things, and they
Definitely.
can finish what they're doing, and it's easier to transition. Because like if you imagine that you're watching something and you're right in the middle of it, and I came down and went, right, Nat, it's time to go for a walk, and turned off the TV halfway through your episode.
I wouldn't find the end of the episode. There could have been something really amazing at the end of that
Yeah, and it would
episode.
be quite frustrating. Well, I know I would find it frustrating if someone turned it off and there was only like 5 minutes left of it, but I just wanted to finish that little bit.
Yeah.
So you can quantify it in that respect, and it can be easier then to transition
Yeah.
onto the next.
Now, a lot of the time when I'm talking to families, and this is still an area I struggle with because gaming can be, and I know it's going off on a little bit of a tangent, but gaming can be quite a difficult thing to quantify because if you think for some traditional games like Mario and things like that, you have an ability to do one more mission, one more
Yeah.
round. However, more commonly we're finding games such as sort of Minecraft or Roblox and things like that, where there doesn't seem to really be a defined end to the game. Now, this is something that we still find that families can struggle with. It's because how do we get them not only to make that transition off the episode, sorry, not the episode, off the game, how do we then actually quantify that to them? Now, I've sort of suggested many a times when it comes to things like Minecraft that you can suggest a quantity of items that they need to find before they finish, or if, for example, they need to build something or create something, it's defining how many items they do this.
Mm.
Now, obviously, some children are very clever and they know how to get around that one. So, Minecraft is still a very difficult one to sort of quantify, I feel, because and I feel with things like Minecraft, it might be actually when we go into the more sort of timers and things like that, you might actually find having things like a visual timer may be more
Say visual
effective
countdowns might be more helpful with
than,
things like Minecraft or
yeah,
Roblox.
rather
Yeah.
than the quantifying of it. So yeah, so sort of we touched a little bit on it, but yeah, like we said, in terms of sort of that fight, flight, freeze and the refusal side of things, sometimes the planning prioritizing can cause sort of a burst of anxiety, which therefore has that impact of the individual to sort of refuse and say no.
Yeah. And I mean, I've spoken about ADHD previously in this episode, but we call it the ADHD nervous system as well. So as you know, kind of like the neurotypical, those who are on like ADHD or autism or dyslexia, who are going to suffer with this kind of executive function side of things. Prioritize what needs to be done. So actually, I can see that I need to do that load of washing, or I can see that I need to empty the dishwasher or tidy my bedroom. Whereas, particularly with ADHD, it's definitely a reward based kind of nervous system. So I'm going to do what gives me that dopamine hit first. I'm going to do what feels good, and I want to do this. And I'm going to leave the dishes until last. So it's trying to create a support system for that, because we'd all love to be able to do what we want to do first, obviously. And it's setting things like I don't know if Karis, one of our lovely therapists over there, she's spoken to me before about arbitrary timers. Has she
Oh yeah,
spoken to you
yeah.
about that? So doing things that you don't necessarily want to do, you can time yourself. Like, so actually I'm gonna make myself a hot drink, and then I'm going to go and play on my game. But whilst the kettle's boiling, I'm going to go and empty the dishwasher. I'm going to go and grab that load of washing and bring it downstairs for mum whilst the kettle's boiling, or something like that. So you're doing very short bursts of those important things that you keep putting off, but you keep using it against that kind of arbitrary timer.
Yeah, and sometimes sort of body doubling as well works
Mm.
because sometimes it's sort of the knowing that someone's there, or especially when it comes to the planning side of things, there sometimes can be that sort of task paralysis, which is sort of
Mm.
getting started on something, or even just looking at the task to be such a huge, humongous thing when actually it's quite a small task that needs to be done. So, body doubling is another thing that can sometimes help. So, that's having someone near you. An example of a family that used it the other day was her daughter had to do tidying of her bedroom.
Mm.
So just to help her in that moment of tidying the bedroom, the mum came and decided to sit with her daughter, and while they were tidying, gave some suggestions, or even just was there
Mm.
just to aid in sort of that side of things. So going into a little bit about sort of task paralysis and what that actually is. So it actually is around sort of the experience of overwhelm and freeze in a moment. It's due to difficulties with executive functioning, planning, or carrying out a task, and can actually become quite overwhelming because it does mean that we create a stress response, which leads us to freeze motion and sort of avoid behaviors. So it's commonly linked to things like procrastinating and ignoring. And for example, it might be an individual that's experienced task paralysis in more sort of adults, I guess, because I feel like a lot of this sort of planning, prioritizing, we talk more about those older individuals because, especially with our younger individuals, there
Yeah.
is a lot more that we can sort of guide and aid with. But actually, in terms of teens and young adults, it can be quite difficult. So imagine sort of they're sat on the sofa and it's just like your body refuses to move, just doesn't want to get up and go. It doesn't want to get on to the next thing because actually internally what's happening is you're thinking about every single little thing that you might need to do. So if we think of sort of young adults or something like that, they're sat on the sofa and they think, oh, I need to do studying, I need to do my homework, I need to tidy my bedroom, I probably need to get my lunch ready, my bag ready. And they're thinking about every single thing they need to do. But because they struggle with that ability to plan, but also prioritize, so learning what actually is the most important thing to get started because everything seems to be on the same level.
Yeah, and it can often seem like they're burying their heads in the sand, but it's not. It's that internal, my goodness, I absolutely don't know where to start. I've got far too much rolling around in my head and on my plate, and I can't just get going on what I need to do.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it really does. And I think from an outsider's perspective, it just looks like they're sat on the sofa doing nothing, they're led in their bed, they're scrolling through TikTok,
Yeah.
anything like that. Because again, that gives the sense that actually we're avoiding the task and we need to sort of do something else that, like Abby was saying earlier, sort of gives us that dopamine, gives us sort of what we want, where
Mm.
actually packing my bag for school isn't going to give me any dopamine.
No, because I don't want to do that. That's boring. I'd rather go on my game because actually that gives me everything, or I don't have to plan and organize that.
Mm.
My phone is giving me everything that I need.
And to be honest, that's actually quite a nice sort of area to think about because you think the reason we choose gaming so heavily is because actually, if you think with gaming, everything within a game is plan and prioritize for
Hmm.
us. Because in terms of sort of a lot of games, we know what we're expected of each level, we know where we're expected to go, what we're expected to do. And commonly, you might find that individuals play the same sort of games or the
Yeah.
same game over and over again because actually this relieves a large quantity of that planning prioritizing because
They don't need to do it's there. It's all there for them. And if they get stuck, there's always like in games like that little person that they can go to and go, have you tried going here? Like to help them with where they need to go next. I mean, and similarly with the TV, like those who rewatch the same TV programs over and over again, and it's a comfort thing. They know what's going to happen. They don't have to try and predict what's going to happen, and it just
Mhm.
is all there for them.
Yeah, you might find those individuals, yeah, they always go back to the same series or the same episode
Hmm.
because actually that's a point where they may be feeling overwhelmed that actually they know what that's coming up, they know what's expected, they probably know it back to front and can tell you it
Yeah,
all the way through.
yeah.
And I think also similarly, this comes into sort of language as well, where you might find individuals talk about the same things over and over again
Yeah, absolutely.
because
Yeah.
again, it's sort of already
It's
planned.
already in there. It's not that in the moment. It's kind of already ingrained in their brains. Like, actually, I'm really confident to talk about this because if someone asks me a question, I've already kind of planned where that conversation can go and what I can tell them about. Whereas if you start a conversation with them about a topic that they're unfamiliar with, I'm actually going to withdraw. I might just ignore you, that sort of thing, because they can't plan what they need to say or predict what is going to happen.
Now, a lot of the sort of what we talk about, again, there is another difficulty that comes under sort of executive functioning, which is task initiation, which can sometimes be the start of
Yeah.
the next step because you have to go through task initiation to get started on a task before you can plan and prioritize. Now, we are dipping into this in later episodes because we felt actually giving you those sort of insights and
Yeah,
our thoughts
absolutely.
and understanding around planning and prioritizing might aid in terms of helping with actually getting going with the task, and then we can move into that task initiation side of things, because there's no point initiating a task if we don't know how we're going
No.
to do that task.
No.
To the task paralysis side of things, how do we help in those moments where we are actually in a state of complete and utter, I don't know, procrastination, avoidance, ignoring? So things like this can be sort of rewriting to-do lists, so only putting the important tasks on. So again, going back to the example that I said earlier in terms of planning sort of to going for school. So I said about sort of packing our bags, I said about doing our homework and things like that. Actually, for me, I think in that moment, it'll be different for everyone. The main thing I need to do is pack my bag. Because if my bag's not packed, ready for school tomorrow, well, there's no point me doing my homework because my bag's not packed ready to go to school. So I'm going to be flying around in the morning trying to find everything. And actually, when I've done my homework, I can put my homework into my bag, which is ready to go. I don't know if that might be different for you, Abby, but in my head, that's where I went.
That's where you go. I think it is different for everyone. And I think a really key thing to do, if you're in that kind of paralysis moment where you don't know where to begin, brain dumping is a really good tool to use. So quite often we try and keep things in our heads. And when it's in our heads, things get forgotten. You start to worry about different things. So getting everything out onto paper, so you know exactly the sorts of things that you need to do, whether that's lists, whether that's just kind of scribbling all over a page, whatever it is, it's out of your head, and from that you can then go on and create lists, or you can use like the 4 square grid where you can prioritize with this kind of what's important and urgent, what's important but not so urgent, like your interests of things that you need to do, or what is not important but also urgent, which could well be like, I want to meet up with my friends, that's urgent for me because I need to get so and so his whatever. But actually, in the grand scheme of things, you've got some more important things to be doing that are, that are urgent as well. So like the homework, or something to do with work even, because we see a lot of young adults that are just like, I just don't quite know how to manage that. So you can lay it all out in this 4 square grid and work out what is the first kind of bit to tackle.
And sometimes, especially getting everything out of your mind onto a piece of paper, because a large quantity of sort of the task paralysis side of things is all the things that I feel I need to do, whizzing round and round and round and round and round. And actually, they could be quite simple, and it could be something that's quite short. And when you see it on a piece of paper, you think, I could do
Actually,
that.
that's a really
That's a
quick
quick
one. Yeah.
That's a quick win. I think,
Yeah.
oh, just get on with that one. Other things is sort of, I guess, not using terms like more time, or wait until I've got more time, or when it feels right,
Well,
or
we all like to wait until there's more time, and then I'm going, curse past Abby, because she said that can be future Abby's problem, and future Abby does not appreciate past Abby.
It's thinking about as well, like how we can attach reward or sort of accountability to a task. So when we say reward, I'm not talking about going and buying that really expensive item that you wanted, or again, I know we've sort of had previous where parents have sort of started with a reward scheme for their children, and each time they come round to a task, the last reward just doesn't seem quite big enough for this task. So you have to get bigger and bigger. I think Chelsea tells me a story about a family that got stuck in the reward cycle. It started with a train, it ended up with a train trip, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So when we say reward, it's sort of those small snippets and immediate rewards. So again, is it an extra sort of 5 minutes on a game, or is it sort of something quite quick, snippy that can sort of happen quite immediately afterwards?
Yeah, absolutely.
For sort of more adults and things like that, is it actually the reward of doing things like your arbitrary timers? So actually my reward is going to be a nice hot cup of hot chocolate or something like that whilst the kettle's boiling. I can go and do my washing up, and my reward afterwards is my nice hot drink. So
and I can have that. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, there are like loads of different apps and things that you can download. We won't name drop loads of them because, licensing. But there are loads that you can get that, particularly for those who like gaming and that sort of thing, that you can get that kind of instantaneous gratification, dopamine hit for achieving something throughout the day. So you set like little tasks that you know that you want to do, and to prioritize those sorts of things. And then you get that little reward at the end of it, and you can have competitions with the family because you could all download it and things like that. And that they're free, and you don't need to pay loads for it, but you still get that, oh, I won at the end of it.
And it's also looking at sort of the your dopamine during those times. So if you think actually listening to music, so this is great for sort of older ones and also younger ones. So you could use music for brushing teeth. So I've just got to brush my teeth until the end of this song, or listening to music, listening to sort of more upbeat music as well. I've just got to tidy my room for the duration of this song. So again, it's giving you an aspect of a time, it's quantifying it, and it's giving you that dopamine whilst you're doing it, because actually listening to the music is quite enjoyable, quite fun, and you want to sort of move on with it.
I think it's really important, because I think like the task paralysis comes in a lot of times when there's a really big thing that you need to do.
Yeah.
So there's
Or lots of things.
or lots of things, but I'm just thinking about if there's a really big thing that you need to do and you keep putting it off and off and off, how do you get around that? I need to start doing that. I need to prioritize that. I need to plan that. So breaking it down into those small steps, so much like the mum that you were talking about that came in and sat and suggested little bits that you could do. Again, taking that kind of like room, like, you need to tidy your bedroom. Well, that seems like quite a big task, because I've made quite a mess of my room actually, Natty, and I don't know where to begin.
Organised mess, sometimes you have to be
Well,
like.
yeah, sometimes it might be organised mess, but a mess nonetheless. And I've been asked to tidy my bedroom and I don't know where to begin. So it's breaking those down into those small little steps that you can make it achievable for yourself.
And I think, again, there was a teen I was working with, and one thing he really struggled with was tidying his room and keeping it tidy. So we just set a simple challenge that every day he only had to pick up 5 items. So, and you think actually throughout the week, 5 items a day actually equates to quite a few items, and probably by the end of the week the room will be tidy. But he's managed to keep on top of that challenge going through and just doing those 5 items.
So it's just those small steps lead to achieving that bigger goal.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
So I think we've sort of talked a lot about strategies, haven't we, around sort of planning and prioritising, because I think it's one of those things that actually you can learn, and putting a lot of sort of focus on it and adding those extra things. I think, again, for those younger ones, it's using visual timers, it's using visual sort of timetables. We often, don't we, in our assessments, either use a visual timetable or we even use post-it notes on the wall and just write what needs to be done on those walls, and use things like to do, doing, done. So there is so much out there that can
support and help with this kind of with this particular area of executive function. And next week we're going to be talking about organisation, which links really heavily to this planning and prioritising. So I think the theme will kind of carry on next week with it. And there'll be lots more strategies and everything that we can try and support you.
So I think actually we've hit a good time. I think we're probably call it a day, call it an episode for today. As we say every week, do leave us a review, do put a comment over on our social media. So just searching Bibic, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, take a look at sort of our upcoming events, go in and comment and share your stories, any questions, because we do really like to hear from everyone.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you, absolutely. But in the meantime, keep it sensational.